Syria's future will be decided by the rebels, but they will need outside help, whether it's in the form of aid or investments or security guarantees. The problem is, again, there is no consensus. Each power has a different priority in Syria. Some want to demilitarize it, some want to democratize it, and others are scared of an ISIS resurgence. So tonight we're looking at the scramble for Syria. What are regional and world powers doing there? Let's start with Turkey. They're hosting more than 3 million Syrian refugees. A lot of them have amassed at the border. Experts say at least half of them will return to Syria. And most families have the same plan. Send the young men first, see how the situation is, and then the whole family can follow. Local governments in Turkey have also jumped in. Some mayors are offering one-way tickets to refugees. That's transport plus relocation costs. So Ankara's first objective is to get the refugees back home. But they also have a military objective, to weaken Kurdish groups. You see, Turkey is home to a restive Kurdish minority. President Erdogan calls them terrorists. Syria also has Kurdish groups, and they're backed by the United States. Erdogan is using this transition period to weaken the Kurds. He's launched multiple strikes on Kurdish targets. Another country is using the same strategy, and that is Israel. Instead of the Kurds, Israel is destroying assets of the ousted Assad regime. All sorts of military sites have been hit by the Israelis. Prime Minister Netanyahu has also reached out to the rebels. He says he is willing to engage on one condition, that the rebels do not help Iran. And rounding off the region are Arab countries. Most of them are in a pickle. They have welcomed the change in the regime, They've also demanded the protection of Syria's sovereignty and territory. But deep inside, the Arabs will be worried. The Syrian rebellion grew out of the Arab Spring, out of Islamic political movements. The Gulf monarchies do not like that. They see such movements as a threat to their power. For example, the UAE is apparently livid. They were caught off guard by the rebel offensive. They also disapprove of America's pivot. You see, the US once considered the new rebel leaders to be terrorists. I'm talking about the HTS. The Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, the Americans call them terrorists. But now Washington is reaching out to them, which is why the Gulf Arab states are nervous. They don't have a part to play yet. So they're watching from the sidelines. Now we come to the global players. Like I said, the US is reaching out to the Syrian rebels. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is traveling to Turkey tomorrow. So the US strategy is quite clear. Use Ankara as a bridge to the new regime. Beyond that, Washington is also concerned about the ISIS.
First and foremost, of course, is protecting our forces that remain there. Second is making sure, to the best of our ability, that ISIS does not reconstitute. Through the Obama administration, then the Trump administration, we were successful in eliminating the territorial caliphate that ISIS had developed in Syria. We don't want to see that revive.
Thousands of ISIS fighters are in Kurdish prisons. The US will want to keep them there. Washington also has a military base in southern Syria. It houses around 900 soldiers. The US will be keen to retain that influence. But to do that, they will need the Kurds. If the Kurds have a say in the future government in Damascus, the US can retain its foothold. If not, Washington may face pushbacks. Look at the situation in Iraq. The US has more than 2,000 soldiers there in Iraq. But the Iraq government does not like it. They have been trying to expel the American soldiers. Then we have the Europeans. Honestly, it's not a good time for Europe. Brussels is more focused on the war in Ukraine. They're bracing for the Donald Trump effect. So West Asia is not high on their priority list. Nonetheless, we've seen some moves. Germany is hosting around 1 million Syrian refugees, but Berlin is not rushing to send them back. Their foreign minister wants to coordinate with the United Nations to see if things are stable in Syria. She has also announced more aid for the country, around $8.4 million.
The situation is so unclear that it's currently impossible to judge whether there will be another flow of refugees from that region or whether a return to Syria is actually possible. In order to ensure further assistance for the people in spite of the difficult security situation, we will provide an additional €8 million in humanitarian aid.
Now, most of Europe is facing the same question. They're hosting tens of thousands of Syrian refugees. Should they be sent back or not? That is the question. Some European politicians are very eager to do this. They say charter planes and return them to Syria. We haven't seen European governments doing that yet, but they have paused asylum requests. Even this year, more than 100,000 Syrians applied for asylum. Those applications were paused after Assad's ouster. So Europe's policy is to wait and watch. And finally, you have China. They did not militarily support Assad, like Russia or Iran, but diplomatically they did. Last year, China hosted Assad during the Asian Games. They also increased financial assistance. China pumped around $3 billion into Syria's oil and gas industry. Assad also signed up for the Belt and Road Initiative back in 2022. So Beijing's plan was to cash in on Syria's reconstruction. They bet on Assad to prevail in this war. And after his ouster, they haven't said much. China's foreign ministry called for stability and peace. They also demanded a political process. Like I said, each player has their own interest in Syria. And they're not sitting idly. They are using force to secure those interests. If they're not careful, the results could be disastrous.